Good morning, everyone. This is the Marketing and Media panel. My name is Stephen Johnston. I'm the founder of Launch Media Network. We're the creators of Gamer Launch and GameSkinny. We do news and information and social networking for gamers. I've got with me Auverin, who is one of our editors, Jonathan, who is our editor and heads up video, and Blane Humphries at the end there, who previously at Novi?
Yep, previously at Novi. The book says I'm an account manager at Novi Unlimited. It lies. I'm actually an account executive at Triple Point PR as of last week.
So, that is us. So, what we're here to talk about is essentially how to attract coverage for your game, both from a journalist standpoint and a social standpoint and a PR standpoint. And so, the first step is, why is this important? So let me do a quick survey, just a little bit of you. How many of you are creating a game of some sort? And then how many of you are promoting that, through social? How many of you are just out there promoting it? Okay. So those of you who said you're creating a game, and the difference between those is you haven't released it in any form yet, I assume. Yeah. Okay. How many of you have you released a game on Steam or some other distribution platform? All right, great. So I'll try to use that to tune how I ask these guys questions and what we go over in order to focus on a bit of that pre-release strategy, and which is really critical. So why is marketing important? We asked the critical question here: if a game releases in the woods and no one's around to hear it, did it release? This is the thing of you've spent this time creating something. How do you tell people about it? So any comments from the panel here as far as why marketing?
Why marketing? Okay, so this is the thing I always recommend people to, when they first launch their game, to kind of do it first for themselves, just to see what all is involved with it, because it's one of those things that people kind of assume they know everything about until they try to do it. And so with us, we serve as more of the, on the PR side, the connection between you, the developer, and press. We kind of take the developer speak and was, what you think you describe your game as, and we make it more press friendly and public friendly and exciting, so that it's not just, what you put together. That's why we, have things like press kits and such, so that we make sure everything is communicated properly and effectively. So that when these guys are writing about it, it's what you actually want the public to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the way we look at marketing is really it's about activating your audience in general. My personal theory from a journalistic standpoint is that very few people create a game without someone in mind that would play it, even if it were themselves. So step one is finding the people who share your interest, or a group of people who share, no matter how large. It's get 1 to get 5 to get 10 to get 100 to get 1,000, and so on and so forth. So talk about activating an audience. So if it's 5 friends or 10 people in an online community, how do you get that audience engaged?
There are a number of ways you can do it. I think social media is obviously very important, and it's the way to reach the most people with I won't say the least amount of effort, but it's a lot easier than some other avenues. Doing things like dev blogs. A lot of people do Twitch streams of game development. You can reach out to influencers, have them cover your games, and when you're ready for it, you can reach out to the media, and all of those things can help you get your your ideas to permeate an audience that it wouldn't be able to reach otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of second that with the social media aspect of it. That's a really good avenue, especially when you don't have a budget, because when you're making a game, an indie game especially, you may not have a big budget, and getting on social media and leveraging your circle of contacts, such as friends and family first, and then moving outside of that and growing that sphere of influence is really important.
And so the good thing, the first thing you need to do when you're trying to activate your audience is know who your audience is. And a good way to go about doing this is look at games that are similar to something you might get, whether it's in the same genre or shares a similar mechanic, and figure out what it is that people are talking about with that particular thing and where they're talking about it, and try and target like those communities first to really kind of bring them into your own. And a good way to also go about doing this is if you have a product that's launched or it's about to launch, include your social buttons and social links and stuff on your main menu, so that people can actually start joining your communities and start actively participating.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to do that social and demographic research, like Blane said, is looking at other games and the community around those games and what do they look like, what do they look for in games, and that can kind of inform your strategy moving forward.
Because it definitely doesn't, it's not just isolated to one game. Once you've built a community, that community is far more likely to engage with future projects than it would be to try and market a new project to a brand new set of people who don't know anything you've done in the past.
Sure. Just to add, one of the elements of marketing and the definition of a market is a group of people who actually communicate with each other. So if you've got two groups, they are not, there's no communication between them. They are, in a lot of senses, not in fact a market. So when you go out to communicate, you need to think about sort of drawing circles around groups of people who communicate with each other. And that's often they have a shared interest in the type of game, so they're part of a forum, and there's messaging for them. So think about the people who might interact with each other, whether that be on Twitter or Facebook, in a forum or whatever, and think about how you're going to message to that group. And also focus your early efforts in terms of audience on those groups individually. Solidify one, look to its edges, and try to grow it out sort of organically there. It's hard to get 5 disparate communities interested in something without significant budget or other forms of effort. But focusing on one of those markets that is communicating with each other is how you get them to do the work for you and talk to each other and spread the word. So we've got a list of here for things to do on your own, and the presentation will be available. A lot of this when you read through it, you'll say this makes just a ton of sense. Almost anything in terms of marketing is really straightforward from a list perspective. In other words, it's easy to find like the 10 things you should do. There's a lot of effort here under the hood that has to be done, particularly with small budgets. So a website, press kit, media profiles, demos, Facebook and Twitter ads, networking at local meetups. As common sense as a lot of that is, we talk to a lot of people who are doing 2 of these. And they are unwilling or unable to do some of these, or in some regard are just sort of blind to it. A lot of it's just the basics. So talk about the basics, like what makes just a functional, marketing or press approach to you all.
A good website, a very good press kit, and either a great trailer or a good playable demo. That's pretty much the holy trinity of good press outreach.
I know we've talked internally about, particularly with an early game, something playable or watchable is pretty much like table stakes for getting our interest internally. It doesn't have to be playable, but you need to see something like a static image is rarely enough. If there's a lot of credibility in the team or other projects and these sorts of things, we can kind of engage earlier. But I think that's part of what you're saying is if you've got something and your only source of credibility is the game, get it viewable or get it playable, and promote that. So Blane may have some ways to.
Yeah. So how many of you all know what a press kit is? Okay. Do you know what to include in one? Oh, okay. Okay, so a lot of people, they're not always sure. I actually just did a consultation on this yesterday. when you're putting this together, like they're saying, you have to show essentially what it is. And the press kit should always include the trailer, screenshots, 8 to 10 screenshots in the press release. And then the press release should also include any assets that you would want featured, because when they start writing about it, that's what they're pulling from when they start writing about it. And so you need to make sure that content is there. If you don't have that, then you're already at a disadvantage.
Yeah. If people want to be cynical, you would say that journalists are lazy. The reality is that we want to focus on the things that are most valuable. And so if you provide screenshots and make the stuff that isn't the additional value that we're trying to provide easy, then we get more time to spend on the things that maybe is the most unique about your game or something you've told us about that's special. It's more about the time that's available, and making it easy for us to get the basics makes it easier for us to focus on the things that make you special.
Yeah, and the other thing you guys got to consider is, I've also been on the press side, and we talked about this before, is when you're on the press, you're getting hundreds of emails a day, and so if you don't have that information, if you get 2 emails, one has the press kit, one doesn't, which one are you going to cover? So that's another way you got to kind of think about this.
It's much easier to be able to look at images in a video with 2 or 3 sentences than it is to look at an email that's 5 or 6 paragraphs long. And when you have those assets you're able to give out to your writer, it not only speeds up the process, but it helps that writer be able to visualize objectively what the game looks like and come to their own conclusions so that they can better write the article.
Yeah, so could you all talk a bit more about process internally? So Blane is down there, has created this awesome press kit. It's got everything it needs. And then how are you all sort of internally taking that and getting to the point where now a reader is reading about that game? Maybe that'll help people understand how critical some of those elements are.
Yeah. So in much the same way that an indie dev is very limited by budget, by team size, and by general bandwidth, publications like ours are also very limited by time, by number of writers, by the resources that we have. And so when something comes through, the first thing we look for is it engaging? Does it present us with materials that we can then present to our audience that will engage them and not only drive traffic to our site, but generate actual interest in the game at hand? So once we see that there is actual interest that we could pull from a particular game, we usually source it out to a writer. We say, hey, there's news to be covered, there's a review to be done, there's an interview opportunity, and we generally let them take it from there and do what writers do best.
Yeah, I think the element there is like every organization has gatekeepers, and so your press kit or your initial contact is sort of a way to get past that gatekeeper. And if it's capable of expressing the uniqueness or the opportunity in writing about the topic or creating some other form of coverage, it's also easier to hand off to another person, right? So Auverin gets it and says, hey, this looks really cool. This looks like there's something unique about this, something we should cover. If she then hands it off to another person and that information is only because she had to spend a lot of time acquiring that understanding, it slows down the process of handing it off. So we've hit on a bunch of, why it's important to get that initial contact right, which is the softball for Blane here. So when should you consider hiring game PR?
So this depends. It also depends on the services that the agency provides. So with the way we did things at Novi Unlimited is we would put together kind of like our campaign prep doc, where we would ask you all as the developers to fill it out, tell us about the game, tell us if you had any campaign goals you wanted me to reach, or if you had any other initiatives you were wanting to do, whether it was corporate or just game specific. And then from there, we would start playing the game to kind of figure out what all was going on. Now, some agencies will provide a little bit of light QA to go with, the service, just so they can kind of figure out what it is that's going on in the game too. So if you're looking to get, something like that done and something more long-term, also with community growth, social media management, or something other than just launch, you would want to start reaching out to them as early as possible, just so you could start planning even if you don't hire them right away, it starts putting it, on your radar and you on their radar so that they can kind of start playing and maybe help guide you along how to start communicating whenever you're ready to start in public. But really, if you're looking at just launch, you want to plan that for smaller indie games at least 5 weeks out, because you don't want to hire an agency and then tell them you're launching tomorrow. We've had that happen. It's awful. You also shoot yourself in the foot that way because it doesn't give press any time to cover you, because you need to do pre-launch. You need to give them codes and access to the game before it launches so that they can start writing like the day you launch.
Yeah, and I think that's an important element of we're talking about process too. Is that we see a lot of game covers, AAAs come out days ahead of time, and that is an inaccurate expectation at different levels in the market, right? And so the part of balancing coverage is getting enough lead time to capture those opportunities that are probably smaller from the publishing side, but valuable. And so the lead time is how we hand it off or put it into a process or some other queue of getting it created. So the 24-hour kind of thing is it's just not going to happen without some extraordinary effort. So do yourself a favor, get ahead of it. It's more likely to occur. Can you talk a bit about the differences in PR companies that are working at different levels in the market?
If you don't mind me grabbing this.
Go for it.
So a mistake that I see a lot of indie developers make is they will spend most of their budget on hiring a AAA PR company because they think that is going to lead to actual success for their game, and that is rarely, if ever, the case. When you're looking for a PR company, it's very important as an indie developer that you look for a company that has established success working with indie games, because the process for an indie game PR campaign is very, very different from the process for a AAA campaign. AAA PR companies can rely simply on the name brand. The name is enough to draw interest. So they can write a one-page press release, no pictures, no press kit, no nothing, send it out, the media is going to cover it. But that is not the case for an indie dev, and so working with a AAA company that's operating as though your game should run under a AAA campaign is not going to do you any favors.
And to kind of build off of that too, the thing when you're hiring an agency or looking at working with not necessarily an agency or just anyone in terms of media is you're not necessarily just paying for the service, you're paying for the relationship that agency or individual has with the media. And so somebody who has strong ties to a lot of the journalists that will cover indie games is something that's definitely more appealing than a big budget studio, because they don't necessarily have those personal ties.
And shop around. So talk to multiple people. Make sure that they're aligned, with what you want to do and how you want to do it. There are a lot of options. I wouldn't say that it's a vast number, but you should be able to talk to a couple of people if that's the direction you go.
Yeah, I mean, having a vetting process in place of looking at the company's history, looking at the developers they've worked with in the past is a boon for when you start out looking for a PR agency.
Blane, you going to say something?
Reddit's also a good place to search, because a lot of our game dev, I believe, has a lot of the PR agencies and people talk about them on there. So.
Great. So I think we really covered this. So can you all talk about, do you have anything to add as far as just the role of PR in journalism?
Yeah. So if your game is point A and media coverage is point B, then PR is the road that leads you from A to B. As journalists, it's not our job to market your game. It's our job to cover it, and cover it in a way that will engage our audiences. But a PR professional will go a long way in making sure that we can do our job and that your game gets marketed properly.
Also on the PR side, our goal is to also pitch. So if you guys are doing something that you may not necessarily realize is unique, we can identify that. And if we know, one of these guys is interested in that specific angle, we can give them the idea for the story, and they can run with it.
Yeah, I mean, the more our interest is piqued by, an email or a press kit, the much more likely we are to spend the time and look through the email and cover the game.
So we talked a lot about a PR company. One of the things to consider is that think of yourself as the initial PR. Passion does go a long way in getting people to interact with something. And if you're working on a small project, you're likely really close to it. You know what's unique. So you got to do a couple of things to get ready.